Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show, your second one of the weekend, you lucky, lucky people. Tonight we have a guest with us. Her name is Mary. She is a Christian and she is going to be doing a presentation on Muhammad. So, welcome to you, Mary. And we also have Mr. Stopspamming here, as usual, who will be giving some counterpoints, perhaps, to this presentation. So, I will now hand it over to my good co host. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Okay, just to put things into perspective and to bring everybody up to speed here, what happened is a couple of weeks ago, we had a topic on the Gin and Tonic Show, which was the historicity of Muhammad. Now, I doubt the historicity of the Muhammad as described in the Sunnah. Okay, there's many Muhammads around, and whatever this may mean, whether this is a title, a name, or whatever, but I am always referring to the Muhammad as described in the Sunnah. Now, what I did, I took a top-down approach, and I think I put 5 elements out there where I started with some text. And as it happened 2 days earlier, I happened to bump into a video exactly on this topic. I found in this presentation, no, in this discussion or whatever it was, a table which took exact. I mean, we all have the same documents, we all same manuscript, same material, same everything. But what I did is I put everything into prose, which requires some explanation if you're going to put it into a video. So what I did is I asked, is Muhammad actually the name? Is it actually mentioned? Is the Quran mentioned? Islam, Muslims, and so on. And in this video that I found, there was a table which did exactly the same thing, but it was much easier to understand because everything was on a table and it actually said, okay, Muhammad is mentioned, da da da, and so on. And this was great. So I use this to show that the texts do not actually refer to the Muhammad of the Sunnah. Then I looked at the environment, the history. I looked at the different caliphates. I looked at things like the coins, which did not somehow match the information that this was a Muslim caliphate. And then I went all the way down to the what I call the kingpin, the basic. I don't know. This is the basis for everything, and that is the city of Mecca. And I used agriculture, I used architecture, I used geography, and so on and so forth to show that this city at the time did not exist and did not exist in the way that it was described. It couldn't possibly have existed this way. And if you look at old maps, I mean, even the map that Mary showed, this what was it, the ancient kingdom, was all great. The only thing it was not what it showed, but what it was missing, and that was the city of Mecca. Jesse, can you just show this map that I'm showing at the moment?
Yeah, bear with me 1 second.
So this is also one thing that I sort of spent a couple of minutes on, which is the trade theory, which says that the trade routes went through Mecca. Now, these are trade routes, and you will notice the only thing missing here is also Mecca. So it just doesn't add up. Okay, so the whole thing is somehow slanted towards an invented Muhammad, and this is why I came to the conclusion that the Muhammad of the Sunnah does not exist as such, can't. And while I was doing this, Mary was frantically writing and saying I was wrong, I was lying, I was doing all sorts of things. So I said, okay, listen, this is great. If I always welcome criticism, especially if it's constructive. So I said, okay, are you willing to come on and show us why you think I'm wrong, what is wrong, and why you think that you can show something different, show us that Muhammad existed? And thankfully, Mary said yes. And here she is now. And this is what the presentation is all about, to go and contradict me and show that Muhammad actually existed. So it's over to you, Mary. Let's hit it. Let's see what you got.
All right. So the reason why I jumped in, because it was actually my my table which had not been credited appropriately, which was put into a video by Jay Smith and Mel, who misrepresented both the table and the sources. And they had taken my table and misused it, which is why I jumped in. A lot of the information that you got is only sourced from Jay Smith because no one else says the things that he says. And some of the arguments that you made have to be from him because no one else makes them. Things like, oh, the Islamic sources say that Mecca is on the trade route, except they don't. They say that the location of the nearest bazaar is the Ukaz Bazaar, which is north of Taif. And Taif is on the trade route. And Mecca is off the main trade route from Taif by like 93 kilometers. So there are people who say that the sources say things, but when you check the actual sources, they're not as they are represented to be by these second and third parties. And so I believe that you really need to go back to the primary sources. If you're going to argue from coins, you need to look up all the coins and what all the coins are and what all the coins say. So you need to check up on what people are making statements about to see whether or not they are accurate. And I'm concerned that people will take arguments that are easily disproven. And like the fact that trade was banned in Mecca proper until after the conquest, according to the Islamic sources, Mecca proper could not have any trade occurring within its limits because it was supposed to be this super special holy shrine and you're not supposed to cut stuff down it, things like that. And Muhammad changed that when he conquered it. And all of these details are important to know, and you need to let the sources speak for themselves to have to represent things reputably, which is what we really should try to do. We should try to be as reputable as possible and as transparent as possible and as deal as justly with the material as possible. And I believe that what is shown by the sources is actually far more damning when you actually pay attention to what they're saying. Now, this is my introduction from a debate I had a little while ago. We're going to break it up. Stop spamming is totally free to interrupt at any point, bring in any points, go, hey, tell me about this, justify this, give me other sources for this. You're making a statement, give me more, because this was a 20-minute opening statement. So I only have 20 minutes worth of material here. So just going straight into my opening statement. It's that I assert that the sources for Islam have typical levels of historical reliability for the types of sources that they are. And so it follows that the best approach for early Islam is normative historical methodology that unites all available sources and evaluates their content and context in the usual fashion. I believe it is important to do this first in the interest of truth, but secondly, when people don't recognize when and where this work is produced, they put on interpretive lenses that filter out what the sources are saying and instead allow very modern Islamicist apologetic interpretations to replace the words and meanings found in the Quran, the classical sources, and the post-classical sources. Instead, we need to hold Islam responsible for the content of its actual sources. Now, I'm not endorsing a unique Islamic methodology or the acceptance of any material uncritically. I'm endorsing the treatment of the Islamic corpus as we treat any similar body of material, such as the material about Alexander the Great. Just as we recognize that the surviving material about Alexander is based on real prior histories that are referenced but are now lost, we must recognize as real the real sources the Islamic writers explicitly state they depended upon. When we use normative historical methods, we will not arrive at the great authentic prophet of a real God Allah, but we will have a largely clear and accurate view of a self-proclaimed prophet with the written form of the name Muhammad. He was from the village of Mecca in the Hijaz. This was a site of one of the few surviving stone idol shrines that had been common among pagans in the Iron Age from Turkey to Yemen. After he was expelled, he moved to Medina in 622 and began the jihad against the world that continues to this day. And he is himself the primary source of today's Quranic text, whatever might have been lost and changed during his life. So let's start with the name Muhammad and where we find it before Islam in our sources. And after I go over Muhammad's name, I'm going to stop and you can ask any questions about it that you want to. So this name is recorded as among ordinary pagan Arab men and the pre-Islamic Hijaz. And the exact written form is found on several old South Arabian inscriptions as a variant of some much more common names with the same root. And in fact, the early Islamic scholars had to make excuses for why there were all kinds of people running around with the name Muhammad, because they later on tried to say that it was a super special name. And they're like, well, why were there people with the ordinary name? Because Muhammad claimed that his name, that people expected someone by his name or some variant of it from the Jews of the scripture, of the Christians and the Jews. All the Jews and the Christians, from reading their scriptures, they would expect this dude with a name like this. Well, then why are there tons of dudes with a name like this? What's the reason? It's like, oh, well, lots of people wanted their guy to be this guy. And that's why they gave him this name. But really, it was a regular name. So focusing on one of these inscriptions, this image here is a tombstone of a man with the written form of Muhammad's name, who is calling on an old South Arabian pagan god to curse anyone who messes with his grave. That's dated to the 4th century earlier because of the arrival of Judaism in the region. It has to be before then. This is a very common type of inscription that we find in the ancient Near East. I included another example of the same variety of inscription here. It must be emphasized how important it is for these inscriptions to write the person's name correctly, because this is how their memory is preserved. While stone inscriptions are the gold standard for evidence for this region at this time, a tombstone would be even more reliable than other kinds of inscriptions for this reason. And here we find Muhammad's written name belonging to an ordinary, dead, pagan man. So from this alone, you cannot argue that, oh, it was a title before then. It's a super special name. No, it's just an ordinary guy has this name. This is beyond doubt at this point. Before the rise of Islam, we find this name in no other region. It is also never used as a title. I want to emphasize this point. This written form has no recorded usage as a name or as a title among Jews or Christians who spoke any of the North Semitic languages, including Hebrew, Syriac, and Aramaic. It's also not a title in Ugaritic, as is falsely claimed by one particular guy who's just being ridiculous. It's a regular name. It was first used by pagans, and it appeared only in Arabic and the old South Arabian languages, where we should expect it to be with the historical Muhammad from the Hijazi region. That's appropriate to his history. And a final point on the name before I ask you to comment on this is that its form is interesting. It's a Shada form, which is written in English with 2 M's. That suggests that the original language may have been the old South Arabian Midian language, which is considered by a number of scholars to have duplication for emphasis in this way, very commonly in their names. Secular history tells us that the first kingdom to control the Hijaz was in fact the Midian kingdom. Early Islamic sources inadvertently provide evidence that the first god of the Kaaba was a Midian high god Wad, and this puts the Kaaba and Muhammad in the Hijaz or very close to it. All right, so do you want to talk about the name Muhammad and its supposed use as a title?
Well, the first thing is you said that my conclusions can only come from copying Dr. Smith. But I told you in the beginning, we all have the same documents, we all have the same texts, we all have the same base material. So why would I mean, I don't follow Dr. Smith, and I think there's a lot of things that I don't agree with. So why would you think that I cannot come to the same conclusion if I'm looking at the same text? I don't quite understand that. Anyway, I do original research. So I go into the text myself, and I go and try and find out if somebody says something, where does it say it? Why does it say it? If I then concur with them, that's fine. But normally what I do is I first go and do my own research, and then I come to a conclusion. And if I then I go and try and falsify it by going into, researching the possibility that I'm wrong. And then I find somebody who says, wow, same thing as I am. And I think, yeah, great. And then he gives me another idea. And it's true that Dr. Smith does give me other ideas. The same as his, because he's got a couple of people that he works with. So there's also, what is his name? Dr. Daniel, I forgot his name. He does old texts. So he is the
Yes.
one who showed that there are huge discrepancies in the different versions of Qurans, the evolution of the Quran, and so on and so forth.
That's not what Dr. Brubaker does, by the way. So what he specializes in...
Hang on. Let me just finish.
Go ahead.
So I find that there are people who work together with him or that he presents or something that make a lot of sense. So I take bits and pieces from them. And this is where I then come to the conclusion, well, if this Daniel, you said it, Brubaker, that's him, yeah.
Yes, Brubaker, yeah.
If he, for example, shows me, okay, here in the Quran it says this, and here in the Quran it says this, and in this Quran it says this, then I have 3 different versions of a sentence in different Qurans. Then I say, okay, then what he does is he specialized in old texts. This is all that he does. What he does is then he dissects it and blah, 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 and he brings me examples, and I see, hey, great, this is exactly what I found. This is exactly what I can do, but I don't speak the language, so I can only compare these things.
So have you read
I'm coming to the
work?
same conclusions as other people do. The next thing is
do you own
trade.
Brubaker's book? That's my quick question. Do you own Daniel Brubaker's book?
Yes, I've got it here, right next to me. Yes.
And so it's about corrections in early Quranic manuscripts, specializing in...
Okay, I don't want to go into one specific book now, because I just want to know why you think these things. And I'm just telling you that I come to a conclusion based on my research. And then if other people also come to this conclusion, I'm grateful for that. And if they contradict me, I'm also grateful, because then I've just learned something. Now, the thing with the trade is, I don't only take trade from one single source, Dr. Hoyland. I go and look at different people who say different things. Then I go to the Quran and I look at, wait, what does it say about trade? Then I go into the Sunnah and see, what does it say about trade? What was Muhammad's profession? He was a trader. He was running caravans for his wife, Khadija. So I go and I look at this and I say, there, it makes sense. What was he trading? And you have a list of things that he was trading from Mecca. They show that people were trading these little god statues. It sometimes even says 360 of them. So they were trading things in Mecca. But this is not the only thing. What I try to show is that there is a map of an area, of a region, and it misses Mecca. You showed a map of Arabia, and it misses Mecca. All the maps do not show Mecca. And that is the point that I was trying to make. Now, you come and you say, there's a Muhammad mentioned somewhere. Okay. What Muhammad is this? What is your point? How do you get from
you have said,
somebody mentioning Muhammad and then saying, this is the Muhammad of the Sunnah? How do you make that connection?
You have said that there are many Muhammads and it's a title and all of those sorts of things, because that's
correct, because Arabic names are normally titles.
No. All Arabic names have meanings.
Yes.
But if it is a normal name and it is only used as a name in the regions in bright green and light green and olive green, that's the only place where this exists in any inscription and in any later record of saying that there used to be a guy with that name. So, it is a name. It is not a title. It is a name for an ordinary human.
So are you saying there is no way that any Muhammad can ever be a title?
It is not a title. It doesn't have a title form because it lacks the article. So if you have a title in Arabic, if you have a title in Hebrew, if you have a title in Syriac, if you have a title in any of the South Arabian languages, it requires an article. It is not in the form grammatically as a title. So it's a regular name of a regular person. This is only the beginning of one point. So do you
I will leave it at that. This is not something that is important for me. Can you show now what this has to do with the Muhammad of the Sunnah?
So It
Sorry,
shows.
can I?
Ugh.
Sorry to interrupt me. Okay, if I can just quickly cut in, we've got a question here saying, "Is Mecca on any maps before the 7th century?"
How many maps are there before the 7th century of this region?
I have no
Hundreds.
idea.
No. How many were made before the 7th century of this region?
Okay.
I have no idea.
I can show you, I don't know how many maps
You can
that
show me
were
as
made
many as
before
you
the 7th
like.
century. We have lots of stories.
No,
We have
we have
people who are visiting places.
Map. One map. How many maps do we have before the 7th, actually before the 10th century, between the beginning of time until the 10th century? How many maps exist that show this region? There's one. It's Ptolemy's map, which is from the 2nd century AD. One map. That's it.
Are you
And
sure
yeah,
about that, Mary?
I am absolutely certain about that.
But you
Okay.
showed us a map the last time. I showed you the map at the beginning of the
Was that
our
map made when that map was made in the 21st century, possibly in the 20th? That is
So
not
why doesn't it
an
mention
ancient
Mecca?
map.
Can I ask my own question
Do
to
you
Mary?
understand that that's a modern map?
Okay.
Mary, can I ask you a question just about the name?
Yeah.
You put that in. I can't remember. Was it a coin or some other inscription with the name Muhammad? I can't remember.
It's a tombstone of a pagan
Interesting.
dude who is calling to Atur. Atur is the male Venusian god. Sometimes the god's female, sometimes the god's male, but the Venusian god in this case is Atur, which is a male Venusian god. And so he's saying, yeah.
Do we have any other examples of this name being used at the time that you're aware of?
We have a second example of the same dude, unless there are two people who have the same dad's name, who made a different inscription, but I only included his funeral monument. There is another monument in which it's at the end of the entirety of an inscription. It's kind of weird there, and people argue about why it's there, but this one is clear as to who it is, what it is. There just really isn't much Arabic that is written at this time anywhere south of Hegra. There's just tiny amounts of Arabic written south of Hegra, and it's not because
so we know. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. As far as we know, then we've got this this one tombstone and a second inscription which also relates to the same person. And
yes, in terms of inscribed writing, we also
is it possible it was being used as a title in the case of this person?
No.
Why not?
Because it does not have an article, and it's in the normal form of all tombstones of this time and place, just giving his name. This is his name. Okay. That's how all these tombstones are there. It's a normal tombstone format, even with like curse at the end, and may Atar overthrow the one who destroys it is a very typical kind of curse at the end of a tombstone.
Okay, thank you for answering that. That's all I wanted to know. So if you want to carry on, I'll mute yourself.
So, I mean, I'm going to address the other things, but this is one of the first things that people tend to bring up to discredit him. Like, I have lots of other material. I was just pausing about this particular point is all. So just moving on, in the Islamic sources, we do find that Muhammad's grandfather.
Hang on, no. You didn't answer the question yet, because the question was: are there any maps before the 7th century?
There's only one map that exists.
Okay.
According to the Islamic sources. Well, some people say it does. I don't think it does, but I don't think it should, because according to the Islamic sources, no permanent residents lived in Mecca until the 5th century.
So what is the oldest city on the planet?
It does not call itself a city at any point. Okay, so if you want to know what the Islamic supposed mythical legendary history is, first, let me ask you, do you think Romulus and Remus existed and were raised by wolves and founded Rome?
What is the oldest human dwelling on this planet?
Oh my goodness. Do you think that Romulus and Remus existed and founded Rome?
I don't care. I want to know what the
Are you talking
oldest
about the
wedding is
mythology?
on this planet.
Oh, mythology. So this is mythology. So can
You're talking
Muhammad
about the
make up
Romulus and Remus
mythology
you're talking about the
about
Romulus
an
and Remus that
existing
were supposed to be
place?
raised by wolves. Yeah, those two.
Right. It's mythology.
Yeah,
They were the mythological founders of Rome. And yet Rome exists. You're asking me if I go,
Who cares, Mary? You're obfuscating.
so
You're running
no,
around, or you're all over the show. Stay
you're playing
focused.
games.
I'm
You are
talking about
demanding.
Mecca. I'm
Yeah,
talking about
I'm talking about
Mecca.
Rome. If I
Okay, if you want to discuss Rome, then I'm out. There's no point talking to you if you want to talk about Rome. I know nothing about Rome.
Wait, you grew up in the British system. You know about Rome supposedly being founded by Romulus and Remus. Everybody knows about that. You learned that in school.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
How about you,
I mean, it's the founding myth of
it's the myth of Rome, right? It's the fictional story about how Rome came into existence.
So
now,
what? What does it have to do with Mecca?
Wait 1 second. Wait 1 second. Do you believe that the Roman Empire existed?
I have no idea what that is. I'm talking about Mecca.
You don't know what the Roman Empire is? Okay. Drastic
I'm talking
measures.
about
You know
Mecca.
what the Roman Empire is, right? Do you think it existed?
I'm talking about Mecca.
Yes, it exists.
Okay.
Yes, obviously existed.
Thank you. The Roman Empire existed. Did Romulus and Remus exist?
Well,
I'm talking about Mecca. Mary, what you're doing is silly.
No, it didn't exist. So
you have nothing, and then you go talking about Rome. My goodness.
There's a real place that people made up a mythical history for. So
Mecca is mythical. So Mecca is a myth. Is that what you're saying?
Like Rome is a myth.
So Rome is not a myth. So what are you saying?
No, it's a
Rome
myth.
is a myth, and Mecca is not a myth. So what is it?
You're saying it's a myth. Rome's a myth, according to you. Rome is a real place. Okay? People made up a myth about its founding. No, and yet it's still a real place.
No, there is no source before the Quran that mentions Mecca, and in the Quran it's only mentioned once.
Oh my goodness. All right. Let's try again.
Look, I get the point that you're making.
And he's having a massive time struggling with this. So when
you're basically
I talk
just using it as an analogy to say that a place can exist now, even if we don't know.
We don't need an analogy here.
Oh my goodness. So if I say that Mecca existed in the 7th century and existed in the 6th century and probably existed in the 5th century, that does not constrain me to say that its mythical founding is true. I can say Muhammad was a real guy who lived there and made this up. Have you got that?
I don't believe it. Kalam, is this really you? Man,
are
you alive, brother? Where have you been?
Yeah.
What the hell? Is this really Kalam? I can't believe it. Come on, I haven't seen this guy for like 10 years.
Okay. Mary, I get the point that you're making. Wow. You're saying that even if we don't have knowledge of the exact historical founding of Mecca, it could still possibly exist and just have a mythical kind of foundation.
No. What I'm saying is that does anyone disagree that Mecca existed by the end of the 8th century, let's say?
That's not the point.
You
made a statement.
Oh my goodness.
Mary, you need to calm down, really. This doesn't work with you getting hysterical here. You made a very, very clear statement. When I asked you what is the first human settlement, or you said that the map of Ptolemy does not have Mecca on it, and you say it shouldn't.
It doesn't, and it shouldn't because according to
Mary, can you fucking shut up? My goodness.
Goodbye. Like you can't string together logical statements.
No, hang on, come on, let's calm down. Let's just keep calm. Let's try and
this is ridiculous.
Be kind of a little bit politer. I know tempers are getting hot and everything, but let's see if we can. Why don't we just move past this issue, because it seems like it's just a sticking point, and I would like to hear the rest of Mary's presentation.
According to the Islamic sources, no one lived at Mecca until Qusay told people that they could build buildings there, and they cut down trees and began to build buildings there. It is a tiny village as described in the sources. That would have happened in the 5th century. So, according to the historical, not legendary portions that Muhammad made up later in his life, but according to what everyone up until Muhammad started telling them that their history is different than what they believed, thought this was a pre-existing shrine that the pagans went to worship their gods, but no one lived there. Now, there are historians who argue that Mecca is on Ptolemy's map. I don't think it is. I don't think it should be. I don't think that there's any reason to expect it to be there because it was a very backwater, uninhabited little shrine. Now, according to what Muhammad told people, he said that it was the place after Adam and Eve were thrown down where? In India. They walked slowly.
That is false. That is false.
All right. Do we actually need to go to Al-Tabari and find out where they were thrown down? You keep saying that you're not getting stuff.
Where was Eve? Where was Eve located? She was in Mecca.
Jeddah. Sometimes, but in the early sources, she's actually in. Oh my goodness.
Look, the point that I'm trying to make is, according to Islamic sources, Mecca is the first city, the first human dwelling ever created on this planet. The Kaaba was built by Abraham in Mecca. That is how old it was. So I maintain it should have appeared either on travel accounts, on maps, on everywhere, because it was the first city ever on this planet. Whether it was inhabited or not is not the discussion. The discussion is, did Mecca exist? Is there any reason to believe that Mecca existed? If it does not show up on any maps, we have to go into past the 8th, 9th, whatever century before Mecca actually shows up in the place where it is. There is, according to Patricia Kroner, it is mentioned in 741, but that is a different Mecca, which is halfway between Damascus and Baghdad. The Mecca next to Jeddah, where we have it today, does not appear until many hundred years later. Now, if you can show me a map, if you can show me any travel document, if you can show me any kind of evidence that shows that Mecca existed before the 10th century, you're welcome to bring it. Otherwise, don't. Just accept that it didn't exist. There is no reason to believe that it existed.
So again, you are saying that either Islam is true or Mecca didn't exist. And this shows
that's not what I'm saying.
Poor thinking.
Yes, hang on, Mary, no. Don't misrepresent me. I said there is no reason to believe that Mecca existed. And if you want to say that Mecca existed, you have to demonstrate it. That's what I'm saying.
My goodness. So
my goodness.
Again,
exactly. That's the way it works.
You keep saying, oh, well, it must be that it existed from the beginning. Aside from which, that's not even what. Hang on, let me show you something to show how clear it is that you are.
Great. Show me that I'm wrong. I told you. Yeah. Show me that I'm wrong and I've learned something. Great.
So you have done your own research about where Adam was thrown down.
No, Eve.
India.
Where does it say? What does it say? You're just throwing India. What do you mean India? Show me where it says India.
Oh, you can't. Oh, here. When Adam came down, it was in India. And where?
Okay, I'm talking about Eve, and you're talking about Adam. You see, this is Mary. This is exactly the kind of thing that I hate about something like what you are doing.
Jeddah.
I told you that Eve in Mecca and Adam in India. That's the way that it works. And you keep on telling me about Adam and Eve. Please.
Yeah, Jeddah near Mecca.
Okay, near Mecca. This is the point that I'm trying to make. So if you are telling Mary, you very clearly said everybody can go back. Adam and Eve were thrown down into India, and I said that is false. Do you accept that what you said is false?
I said that Adam and Eve were thrown down, both were thrown down in India, according to some, and other ones you asked in Mecca. I said, what about?
Do you agree now that was false?
Oh my goodness. No,
because oh my goodness! It doesn't matter how indignation.
You can go back and you can hear me say that
you were wrong?
You can go back and you can hear me say Jeddah for Eve.
You are so dishonest. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, you carry on. I'm going to shut up. I'm not going to do anything anymore.
Anyway, Jeddah is not Mecca. It's near Mecca, but it is not Mecca. And again, hang on. The first one to walk around, apparently this is knee high to them, in this legendary mythical text, there's already a house there. There's already the Kaaba there. At the time of Adam. Why is that? Because according to what Muhammad said, which is a very silly thing, but he said it, he said that people continued to worship there until the time of Noah, and then it was swept away in the flood. Again, I agree. Very silly thing. Did not happen. This is the mythical part. Let me share my other screen again. Sorry, going to take a second. Can't talk and share my screen at the same time. It's a little bit complicated. After that, everything was swept away at the time of Noah, whenever that was supposed to be. And then later, Abraham supposedly rebuilt it with Ishmael. And at that time, Hagar caused the Zamzam to turn into an entire stream. And if only she had done the spell right, it would have continued to be a lovely stream. But instead, she did it wrong, so it dried up pretty soon. And Ishmael's descendants abandoned living there. And it was permanently resettled at the time of Qusay. This is inventing a very ancient and illustrious backstory for what was an ordinary, unimportant pagan shrine. Many other Taif is not mentioned on Ptolemy's maps. Taif absolutely existed in the 2nd century. There is only one map that was ever made of that region. It was made by a guy in Egypt who was compiling reports from travelers. I personally do not believe that Mecca is on it. I do not believe that anyone, I am not even sure that the pagan site had been set up yet. Good chance it had not. Good chance it wasn't set up until the next century. But even if it was insignificant and unimportant. This is a historical view versus either saying that you're just going to reject everything if this legendary material is not true. I am giving a historical view with normative historical methodology. None of the other small settlements in this area were on that map either. The chief capital of the Kinda Empire, the Kingdom of Kinda, is not on any map because no maps were made between the 2nd century and the 10th century. There are no maps. No one made a map of this region. Literally no one. So an entire kingdom was founded. Their town, their capital city, it wasn't very big, so maybe capital town, was founded and then was abandoned and fell into disrepair. Never shows up on any map. Why? Because there weren't any maps in this period. The ruins have been found. It exists. It's there. But it's not on any map, even though it was the head of a kingdom, because no one's making maps of that area. You can't ask for information for sources that you should have no reasonable expectation would exist. A historical, possibly not even existing yet, historical shrine in the 2nd century where no one lived would not show up on any maps. Anyway.
And that is your evidence that Muhammad existed?
That is one piece of evidence about the sources, the actual sources of the founding versus trying to take in the mythology.
Your job today is to show that Muhammad exists.
Oh my goodness. And we will do that if we continue. You wanted to go off topic from where we were.
No, I want to go on topic. Show us that Muhammad existed.
All right.
Well, just carry on with the presentation.
All right. In the Islamic sources, we find that Muhammad's grandfather refused him the family name of Qatham, maybe even taking that name away from him. This is spun as Muhammad being too special for such an ordinary name, but we can suss out from the sources that it's because the grandfather believed him to be illegitimate and instead gave him a man's name connected to the other tribes living around Mecca, basically saying, one of these guys is really your father, so I'm going to give you one of their names. So Muhammad's name already places him as an ordinary man in the peninsula of Arabia, and it even suggests the Hijaz. We're already seeing a pattern that will only get clearer. The content and context of the sources support a singular Hijazi man who is a self-declared prophet to be the ultimate origin of Islam. So let's evaluate a critical issue that arises when an alternative to a historical singular man, Mecca, is claimed. How would a mythical Muhammad have been created and promoted, and how would people have come to believe in him instead of their own real history? Basically, something real happened. How did this get replaced? Muhammad mythicists who reject normative historical methods propose that the Islamic figure of Muhammad was a rewriting of history, usually placing this event during the classical period. A number of people explicitly endorse this view. The rewriting would be for the purposes of forging a national identity. Authorities would have taken rough legends about multiple figures, folk history, prophetic expectation, and or fragments from various religious documents and shaped them into something new. The first text for this, the Quran, was necessarily created in and disseminated from a central location. It's from a central location, period. The same Muhammad mythicists who demand continuous documentation from Muhammad's birth to the Abbasid state, surviving in period manuscripts, will not be able to provide this for any of their theories, nor are they able to provide the kind of evidences that normative historical methodology demands. Mainstream historians freely acknowledge that the Quran has no knowledge of any Jewish or Christian scripture or other religious text in a written form. It's able to access them only through oral retellings, which is precisely what Muhammad's contemporaries accuse him of in the Quran itself. Yet, Muhammad mythicists stipulate that the Quran, as we have it now, was, at minimum, extensively edited into an unrecognizably new text and religion in a literate environment with knowledge of Christian and Jewish writings. To emphasize, this new text would have been approved of in and disseminated from Syria and or Mesopotamia, the power centers of the classical caliphate. This is a highly literate area where Jewish and Christian religious texts were in constant use. There were many, many copies of them. Anyone who tells you, oh, maybe there were only a few copies and people couldn't check up on that is just incredibly untrue. This may have been the most literate period of time in the history of the world up until this point, and one of the most literate places. Yet the Quran did not make use of these, even while it claims to match the canonical text. And because it doesn't match and claims it does, it falsifies itself in a way that any interested person can discover for themselves. So let's examine several examples of this self-falsification, beginning with how the Quran argues for the authenticity of Muhammad. According to the Quran, Muhammad is prophesied in the scripture of the Jews and Christians such that they recognize him as they recognize their sons. Well, what does that mean? Ibn Kathir gives the consensus handed down understanding that Allah said that the Jews and Christians know present tense Muhammad based on the news and information they have present tense from the previous messengers and prophets, that is, in scripture. This includes his physical description, among other things. There are various sources for all of these things that reinforce what Ibn Kathir says. He is giving an appropriate summary of the claims of Muhammad and the Quran. The only element of the description of Muhammad mentioned explicitly in the classical Islamic sources as being in the scriptures of the Jews and Christian is Muhammad's large hairy mole. The existence of the mole, its appearance, and its location a little bit to the left side of his back, they're all supposed to be known to the Jews and Christians in their scriptures. So where is there anything that could plausibly be a prophet with a holy mole in the previous scripture? Well, it doesn't exist. Likewise, the Quran attempts to cite the words of Jesus, but it invents something new instead of adapting and reinterpreting something that exists in Christian scripture. And in contrast, other groups that attempted to co-opt scripture, what they would do is they would twist things that existed and then write extra stuff around them to give them a new context, rather than invent something that didn't even exist in the scripture in this kind of way. and say that it was with the people, that it is in the scripture. The confident assertion that the scriptures with the Jews and Christians clearly predict a Gentile or unlettered prophet is really what it means. Somebody who's unlettered, unstudied in religious studying is also untrue. It follows that the story of a holy mole would be invented by a 7th century self-declared Hijazi prophet if he really had a mole. It would serve the purpose for this man of changing this mark from the kind of thing people normatively associated with demons or other kinds of negativity to a proof that he really was a prophet. And no 7th century Hijazi Arab had access to Jewish or Christian scriptures in a language they could understand to contradict him. This was such an important part of Muhammad's prophetic claims. There are many lavish descriptions of the mole from his immediate followers that are carried through into the most highly respected hadith material, repeated with emphasis through the end of the 15th century. It's not plausible for powers of the classical caliphate to invest in such a suspicious mole story, or to promote new words for Christ, or to rely on a non-existent prophecy. The caliphate existed in a context where the Jewish and Christian scriptures were readily available to reference to evaluate truth claims about them, and they were widely in use. These claims are not only easy to disprove, but make Islam look foolish to anyone with a basic familiarity with either set of scriptures. It follows it is not plausible that the caliphate is responsible for the contents of the Quran in a significant way, and the contents of later materials like the Hadith and the Sirat literature were also constrained to support historical events that people widely remembered and transmitted. Let's move on to the Quran. Why is it true according to its own main argument? Well, it's supposed to be true because it confirms, verifies, certifies, proves true the scripture that is currently with the Christians and Jews, between their hands, in front of them. In the Quran, the scripture of the Christians and the Jews is called reliable by Allah, who demands that they rely upon it because it will lead them to affirm that they recognize Muhammad and recognize the scripture that he brings as identical to their own. The Quran is supposed to give the same revelation that is in other scriptures, all from the same heavenly book, just in different languages. This is only evidence if it's true, but also if everyone already accepts as true that this book can't plausibly be a human copy or translation. The argument rests on 2 pillars. First, the inaccessibility of the matching text, requiring a miracle for the match to occur, and secondly, that it really does match. A Muhammad from Mecca would not have access to Jewish and Christian scriptures, and neither would his followers, so he could be confident in not being held accountable for what he claimed about them. Therefore, this argument worked for him in his context. But because the second pillar doesn't stand, it doesn't match what he claims it does, what it claims it does, it self-falsifies to anyone in a more educated context. The argument that the Quran gives for its authenticity, which later Hadith and Sirah material supports, demonstrates the classical caliphate state did not create or choose to promote the canonical Quran or the Mohammedan accounts. Instead, it was saddled with them. In fact, the clear false claims of the Quran caused serious problems from the lifetime of Muhammad forward. To sidestep these issues, the classical caliphate was forced to forbid Muslims from reading Jewish and Christian scriptures. They were also forced to declare that a non-Muslim who read or studied the Quran was under a death sentence. Non-Muslims could only hope to learn what they might happen to overhear, and you had to convert before you found out what was in the Quran. And once you did, you'd be killed if you left. So
Mary, sorry,
Yeah?
can I quickly interrupt to ask a question?
Yeah.
The claim that there would be no Jewish or Christian scripts in the region.
That's not my claim, just to be clear. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So you're just giving the argument as they would present it.
No,
okay.
no. I want to clarify. So in Mecca proper, there might have been people who said that, yeah, I'm a Christian, and had some sort of funny idea they picked up from somewhere. But scripture of Jews, scripture of Christians did not exist in Arabic at this time.
But I mean, there were kind of Jewish tribes on the Arabian Peninsula.
To the north, yeah. But what did they study their scripture in? They studied it in Hebrew, but also all of their targums and their other material. It was all in Aramaic, right?
Okay.
And I'm not, and they did say this guy is full of it. He's lying, right? That's what the sources say. They say that he said that he's lying. But what did he say? He said, well, they're lying about their sources. When you come into contact with honest ones, they'll tell you the truth. The people around Muhammad, his immediate Arab followers who spoke Arabic, they did not have the capacity to read the scriptures if they came into contact with them. So,
Okay. Fair enough.
yeah, so this is an oral environment for these people, which is very unusual at this time because far to the north, this is a very literate environment by historical standards. It's massively literate by historical standards. Today we want everybody to be literate, but back then, 15, 20% of your male population, maybe half that for your female population. That's still a really impressive number of people who could read and write. But if we're talking about they would have run into people who spoke other languages, who studied these things. And what Muhammad said, whenever people said that, no, I mean, he got his backside handed to him by the Najrani Christians. He was so humiliated that he had to fall back upon just doing a mubahala, like a curse war. Let's do a curse battle, because he got so shamed by them, because he was totally unprepared for the kinds of things that they said. He had no idea. Like, he had heard a lot of stories and he had sorted them out in his own mind as to what he thought that they meant, but he was extremely confused. So
I'm imagining like a rap battle now with Eminem or something.
Yeah, I mean, well, there are a lot of rap battles in basically in Arab culture at this time, where they would like make up songs about one another, and some of the Quran is like some of this rap battle material. It's a very Arab document, a primitive Arab document where people are like calling down curses at each other and things. But yeah,
But
it's
this is evidence for the existence of Muhammad. How exactly?
this is evidence for the context of the Quran itself. I will go on to the material and how I'm giving an entirety overview of the kind of place in which this arose. So,
But you're supposed to be here to tell us or give us, present to us the evidence for the existence of Muhammad.
So I am giving you evidence for the fact that the shape of the Quran as it is can only come out of a context. First of all, they have to be speaking Arabic. It's an Arabic book. Secondly, and I didn't even talk about the dialect, which is Hijazi Arabic. The dialect is Hijazi, from the Hijaz and nowhere else. But leaving that aside, didn't go into specifics of that, but that it's from a place where the people immediately around him did not know, were not literate in other languages and didn't know the other materials.
Apart from the fact that that is nonsense, how does that give us any kind of evidence that Muhammad existed? You're just talking about the Quran. We know the Quran existed. It exists today. That's not the discussion. The discussion is there evidence for the existence of Muhammad?
How was the Quran?
There's no point in now telling us,
Oh
well, there was an Arab, peninsula, and there were people there, and they spoke languages, and this doesn't help. We're looking for evidence of the existence.
Yes, and I'm giving that to you if you'll just be,
but
please be patient.
You say this is going to be
All
a
right.
short presentation,
So,
but you haven't given us anything so far.
You have to understand the arguments being made. I cannot do the understanding for you. Anyway, this shows that the Caliphate knew that the Quran was the death sentence. Shows that the Quran was not only not persuasive to outsiders, they knew that the Quran also invited Muslims themselves to apostasy if they were permitted to examine its claims. Yet this is a Quran that Muhammad mythicists claim that the Caliphate is responsible for the purposes of strengthening the new state and providing rhetorical arguments for its new religion. The historical evidence shows that the Quran itself was compiled shortly after Muhammad's death in largely the form we have now. Not perfectly, not word by word, not even word by word, not phrase by phrase, but verse by verse, with disagreements about 5 short prayers recorded, okay? This is proven by the Sanaa manuscript, whose lower text can be confidently dated now before 669. This damaged manuscript preserves about a fifth of the modern Quran, yet it contains no variants that are greater than the length of a phrase. Within its surviving text blocks, there are no extra verses or missing verses, and the verses are in the same order. That doesn't mean that there are no variants. In fact, an early count was 61 meaningful variants when compared to the Hafs version most popular now, and that would work out to about 300 across the complete manuscript. So these kinds of variants are not something that classical scholars were unaware of or that they tried to conceal. Classical Islamic scholars, whether we have people like Muqatil trying to systematically document every variant beginning in the 8th century, a project that continued past the classical age. This is evidence that the Quran was originally recorded by various scribes as the dictated words of Muhammad, which he sometimes did not remember exactly the same in different reciting sessions, despite the manuscripts he had to help his memorizing. This is evidence against the idea that the Quranic text was a later concoction. If the text is novel, there should be no phrase level variants to record. Instead, the scholars should be so lax in their view of what is proper Quran that they wouldn't notice even a substantial claim. Furthermore, if they were part of the group who was concocting it actively, they would not invent minor variants to cast doubt on their work. All the variants ought to be scribal from after its concoction, right? It's these word level and phrase level variants that were marginalized by the central authority, yet none of them give us a book that is different in its basic content and message about theology or the state. For after standardization, the Quran was, for any historian, the same basic book. There are all kinds of problems with the Quran and the record from a Muslim point of view. There are problems as a Muslim with what is Quran and what is not. But with a historian's understanding of what a text is, with scribal traditions, variants, different recensions, all being lumped within the name of a singular text, it existed, and it existed very soon after Muhammad's death. The greatest difference in manuscripts concerned 5 short prayers and whether they should be called Quran or something else. Their existence and their divine authenticity were not doubted by the people who are debating this, only their inclusion in a Quran manuscript. The sources that Muhammad mythicists like to depend on to claim that the Quran was a flexible text that existed in many forms instead show that it existed from the outset in slightly different but very rigid versions that people fought bitterly over. People fought hard against giving up their 2 extra prayers. This is the opposite of people who would accept a radically different Quran. Returning to the context of the sources, they reveal what? Do they reveal that they come from a place like Petra? No, they reveal that they must come from the context of a place like the real historical Mecca, which was poor, undeveloped, and had no agriculture or detailed knowledge of how people and civilization lived. This is formative to the idea of the world expressed in the Islamic sources. We know that early Mecca had no cultivated plants, which the Quran explicitly says is true of the location of the holy temple it claims that Abraham built. It's right there. No agriculture in the house of Allah. O Lord, lo, I have settled some of my posterity in an uncultivatable valley near unto thy house, so that they establish proper worship, blah, 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 blah. And what happens? Please provide for them fruits in order that they may be thankful. So they have to bring in full fruits from outside because it is a plantless, in some translations, uncultivatable valley. It has no agriculture. So they need to be provided with fruits from the outside. In fact, the Quran knows so little about agriculture that Allah claims to have created all food-producing plants in mated pairs. There's boy wheat and girl wheat, boy date trees and girl date trees. Every plant that produces food is in mated pairs. They mate and the girls bear their fruit the same as animals. That is the idea in the Quran. Thus, the Quran could not have been produced in an agricultural context. That excludes Syria, Mesopotamia, and even oases from being the first context for the content of the book. Here we have a map showing where agriculture had reached by various areas, but by various time periods. You have to, the Quran's context and its ideas about how plants work come from the areas that are still gray, that have no agriculture. So, furthermore, the Quran once you overlap the Arabic language with that, you don't get many places that had people in it at all, because you have to leave out the empty quarter. So now you have the Nejd desert and you have the Hijaz, and that is all that is left on that map. So furthermore, the Quran and the Hadith attributed to Muhammad have no knowledge of perennial rivers. Instead, the Quran thinks that rivers are underground flows of water that only occasionally pop up in oases. Even the rivers of paradise don't flow over the land. This places the Quran among a people isolated from areas with knowledge of rivers, which would exclude Mesopotamia and the Levant. Muhammad's paradise promises palace for its inhabitants, but the floors of these palaces will still be made of dirt. The dirt will be musk, so it'll be really nice and expensive dirt, but they will still be dirt floors. This places the Quran in the context of the mind of a person who couldn't imagine a house that had floors made of anything but dirt. Islamic sources clearly record Muhammad's fear of toilet demons that kept the Muslims from using latrines of the Medinans for years. So they moved to Medina, and Medina people used latrines. These people didn't. Instead, he kept to the primitive Bedouin practice of defecating outside that is reported being practiced at Mecca. This isn't an isolated report, but provides the context for Islamic law to this day. It directly led to Umar manipulating Allah into revealing the verse of the Hijaz by harassing women who were defecating by night in the fields. No primitive Meccan toilet habits, no hijab today. All of this because Muhammad was a historical figure from a historical place that fits Mecca. And you'll say, it was a great city. You look at the actual sources and it says that in Mecca, aside from the population studies done, where Majid Robinson, I'm probably butchering his name, sorry, he's Dutch, he totaled the total number of population at about 550 people total in Mecca. This is not a huge city. It's never described as a huge city. It's described as being full of mostly one-room huts with an occasional two-room hut. It didn't have roofs until very recently. And they had recently started making slightly more sophisticated walls and things, and they pooped outside like the Bedouins because they were recently descended from Bedouins. They're very primitive, very small town. They started pooping in the Mecca and the latrines in Medina because he managed to get enough followers that this became extremely noxious and everything was like smelling like poop all the time. And so that was the event that caused the people to stop pooping in the fields and stuff. So Islam is also permanently shaped by Muhammad getting repeatedly tripped by the Jews in Medina, according to the Islamic sources themselves. These reports belong to a context where Muhammad and his followers didn't realize he was tricked. A Jewish woman tricked Muhammad into teaching people that people got tortured in the grave, and the primary reason is because of urine. The Jews got him to include the stories of the seven sleepers of Ephesus and the Alexander romance in the Quran, and claimed that they're in the Torah too. The Jews got Allah to say that they accurately know things about the ruh, or spirit, that Allah won't tell Muhammad or put in the Quran. They got Muhammad to state that some people accurately know how long the sleeper slept and how many there are, but the Quran itself is unable to say which report is true. That Muhammad failed at least some of these tests is transparent to anyone with a basic Jewish or Christian education in late antiquity, and it is even suggested by the sources themselves. The fact that these events remain intact points to an authentic failure that a charismatic leader was able to deny plausibly to his devoted followers, one that they nevertheless recorded and transmitted because it was a true event that they were able to falsely contextualize in their own brains as a success only because of their own location and their lack of knowledge and their trust in this guy. So in this time, we've explored just a few pieces in the vast body of evidence that together points to a historical Muhammad. Every piece of evidence, textual or otherwise, consists of its content that comes from a specific context. When you instead try to force material into an artificial model, you lose the understanding of it. You erase the man who went around telling people that his mole proves he's the prophet, and the Jewish and Christian scriptures say so. You erase the canonic author's certainty that he has the same contents as contemporary canonical Jewish and Christian scriptures. If you deny that Muhammad was a form of an ordinary existing name, you endorse the view that something special was at work if a child was given the name and grew up to claim to be a prophet. By discounting Mecca, you erase the Quran's mistakes about agriculture and ignorance about how rivers work. And you deny that the Muslims honor a genuinely pre-existing stone idol at a pagan shrine that is in no way unique among many other Iron Age pagan shrines. The content and context of the materials concerning Muhammad do not indicate that they are a product of the 7th to 10th century caliphate. Rather, the materials yield innumerable threads of data that weave together that create a stark tapestry of a 7th century self-proclaimed Arabian prophet who hails from a Hijazi pagan shrine with no firsthand knowledge of the Jewish and Christian scripture he invokes in order to validate himself and his supposed holy book. Now,
okay, sorry. Just before you
Yeah.
carry on, I just want to welcome in Kalam from Titans TV, who's joined the panel. So I just want to welcome in and say hello, sir.
hello.
Peace to everybody on the panel. Nice to finally be back on this channel. It's been a long time.
Jeepers.
And yeah,
Like a voice from the tomb.
Kalam,
Man,
I
what
know
are you
when you were
doing here?
last
Where have you
here.
been? Okay, sorry, I'll keep quiet, but I mean, I love this guy, right? I've made videos about this man. So it's a great surprise to have you here.
You know when you were last here, Kalam,
thank
it was 2018, I think, was when you made an appearance on the show last time.
Geez, that was in my previous life.
That was at the peak. That was 7
2018,
years ago
wow.
now. It's crazy. So
Yeah.
welcome.
Oh
So,
my God.
Mary, sorry if you want to carry on. Mary, how much is
Yeah.
left of the presentation?
Well, that's the main part of the presentation. I wanted to address a few, because this is my opening statement and my rebuttals. For example, I have things like the coins that you'll say, oh, well, there are crosses on coins. Well, guess what? There were fire altars on coins from as early as there are crosses. There was also Muhammad is a messenger of Allah on an incredibly early coin that was identified as Uthmanic by the expert, going blank on his name right now. Anyway, by someone who wrote an entire book on Arab, definitive book on early Arab coinage. They used fire altars on these coins because this is a Sasanian one, by the way. When they took over Persia, they tried to mint these coins, and the Sasanians wouldn't use them at first. So they went ahead and minted coins in the old style with additions that showed that this is absolutely under the caliphate for a long time before they were able to replace them with their preferred iconography. We also have testimony from Christians. We have 2 different Christians saying that these people who hate us want to get rid of the crosses and the king, and in one case it actually says, and our emperors from the coinage, but they are not able to do so. And then we have someone else say that Muawiyah tried to remove the crosses and the people wouldn't take the money. And then later on still, we have another Christian source saying that that they have replaced the crosses with the name of the beast when it says Muhammad is a messenger of Allah. A later Christian is calling that the name of the beast. So we have knowledge as to why they had crosses, and they had Zoroastrian religious symbols at the same time. And it's because they did not yet have the power to force people to use this without chaos at a level that they weren't able to deal with yet at that time. As they increased their grip on people, they were able to make that change. So.
Okay, is that your kind of concluding to your presentation?
Well, this was, again, making a positive case for the context of these early documents, where they came from, where they must have been created, how they couldn't have been created somewhere else. I did not talk about inscriptions very close to Taif, for instance, that were included in the name of one of Muhammad's companions that has been dated by epigraphers to Muhammad's lifetime. Other early things that are other early inscriptions. The earliest inscription currently that mentions Mecca, I believe, is now late 7th century, that explicitly, that without argument, because there are other things. There are people who have the name servant of what might be Mecca, and some people say that those are mentions of Mecca from way earlier. I'm not willing to say that. I'm not willing to say that these servant of Mecca inscriptions are certainly Mecca. So I'm not saying that they are absolutely evidence, but in a historian's perspective, that this was a backwater, no name, tiny little town that a few pagans went to, then that is what the evidence shows. I am not saying that it was a huge trade city. No sources say that. Yes, they traded with people. So did all the Bedouins. All the Bedouins traded with people. They went to fairs. They traded. But the idea that it was an enormous city, well, the sources don't say that. That it had great buildings, well, the sources don't say that. You know, the Kaaba itself, according to the sources, didn't have a roof throughout most of Muhammad's life until like he was 35. If we say he was 40 and 6'10", I don't care whether or not he was, but that's, so there is a disconnect from what Muhammad mythicists claim that the sources are saying, drawing on all of these later fabrications, elaborations, fantasies, legends, versus a strict historian's perspective, taking the kinds of views of the sources that one would expect a historian would take.
Okay. All right. Well, Mary, thank you very much for your presentation. I know it got a little bit heated there in the beginning, but we managed to get through it without any chairs being thrown, so that's a good thing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anyone. Kalam, did you want to cut in? Tell us, because obviously you've been listening from the chat. What do you think about what you've heard tonight?
Definitely. There's some points that I definitely agree with. As I stated before, the fact that Muhammad was a nominal, it's a name. I do definitely accept that Muhammad was a name versus it being a title. I would even add to the fact that Muhammad is also a theonym. It could also be the name of an actual deity as well, because we find inside of the South Arabian inscriptions, I believe it's 523, the deity was also named as Mahmed or MHMD. It could be pronounced Muhammad or Mahmed or any variations, because we don't actually have the vowel systems in place. So yeah, definitely, it's nominal in that sense. But I wanted to ask a question though. In terms of the Muhammad of the Islamic traditions existing, could you just give me two simple arguments as to why you posit that, yes, definitely the Muhammad of the Islamic traditions actually existed?
One simple argument is simply that we have surviving written records aside from the Quran and even aside from the rock inscriptions. We have physical fragments beginning to show up toward the end of the 7th century of things that would later be considered hadith compilations. They aren't really at this point. We have a coherent narrative of an idea of who Muhammad is without any disagreement that is not like the normal levels of historical confusion whenever people first learn things and hear about things from far away. Like if you're familiar with Herodotus, you read Herodotus. If you read Pliny, if you read Plutarch is writing a history. And at the same standards of Plutarch and other historians of that sort, you have a historical Muhammad. We have many, many sources, and these are just some of them, that refer to the emergence of these people who are described consistently from the beginning as having a faith in opposition to the Christian faith, who are from Arabia. The dialect of the Quran is Hijazi. The Quran itself is now indisputably, nobody except for Shoemaker, he's like alone in a corner trying to argue that the text was not set from very, very soon after Muhammad's death. And look at even Patricia Crona. She never doubted that there was historical Muhammad. That is a very, very, very fringe view. She wanted to move him to Mecca because she had taken as fact some of the things that Montgomery Watt imagined, but even she walked a lot of that back again. And Michael Cook became an expert. Her co-writer became an expert in the early manuscripts because he's like, oh, geez, we're totally wrong about this. There's tons of manuscripts from the 7th century. She was writing with supposition that things weren't from the 7th century and people hadn't worked out the Hijazi dialect and all of those things at those times. So we have the language being Hijazi, the context clearly being a place that has no knowledge of what's in the Jewish and Christian scriptures and having clearly easily falsifiable statements about the other scriptures in its agreement with them. Then we have the memory of all the people who are writing about their grandparents and in some cases great-grandparents and what they believed and why they came there and what they were doing and what they were doing things about. Mecca and Medina were one of 4 main centers, and later there were more, but the 4 main very early centers of Islamic learning were in Mecca, Medina, Syria, and Kufa. Then there were a bunch more later, like 50, 60, 70 years later. But everyone agrees that there are all these people who lived in Mecca in the 7th century. And then some of them moved to Syria, and some of them did this, and some of them did that. They're writing about their fathers, their grandparents, their great-grandfathers. And no one is in disagreement in a society that is very, very, very based on real people and about the histories of their own parents and their own parentage and what their parents did. It's a very oral culture based on personal histories, and they're in agreement with what all their parents did and what all their parents believed and what all their parents said. Even as they spread out across hundreds and hundreds of miles, they are in agreement. And this is not a windowing path of, trust me, bro, this is, if you're looking at the level of historical attestation to Muhammad, it is very good for the 7th century. And I would have no reason to say that. So the question is, let's say Mecca existed during the 7th century, or was supposed to be. Was Muhammad operating from there? Well, of course, Muhammad was later on operating from Medina by tradition. And no one disagrees that Medina existed, right? We're all in agreement that Medina exists. And all of the sources universally say that that was the home of the early caliphate. Why would people in Medina be making up a Mecca, for heaven's sake? It's very odd. Which is, again, this incredibly unimpressive backwater with a Wugidi shrine that doesn't even have square corners. Like, it hasn't had square corners until fairly recent, right? So all of the historical sources say that Umar, Abu Bakr, Uthman, their kingdom, the center of their kingdom was in Medina. And so what would be the point to make up a Mecca? What would be the point to introduce a pagan stone that was so offensive to new converts that they actually stole it and smashed it and threw it down the toilet? Like, because they recognized it was pagan, right?
Mary, are you under the impression that you are answering Kalam's question?
Well, Kalam, did you want to come back on that?
So what else do you want from, what would you
Mary, maybe let Kalam
that?
come back on that and see what he has to say.
Okay, so you have said a lot, but I'm still trying to figure out what exactly. Okay, so the Islamic traditional narrative of Muhammad. Let's just say, he was born in 570 and died in 632. Okay, that's the traditional narrative. I think we can say, all right, cool. That's something that is known. Cool. What have you found that historically verifies just the simple fact that he was born in 570 and died in 632, or anything? Well, like, how do we verify that Muhammad truly actually existed?
So if you want to talk about 5 70, you do realize that there are variant traditions about the year of Muhammad's birth.
100%.
Why would people not know when he was born if he is an invented figure whose birth could be assigned any date?
Because there's various narratives telling different stories. Different
Okay,
groups
so
telling different stories.
so people are telling different stories. They're just making up different stories at different times, but they're all agreeing on this huge body of things, but then they're just disagreeing on these small different details.
I don't think
Versus,
that's not a small detail. So, for example, if there's a whole century of when Muhammad was born, there's a difference in opinion of a whole century of when Muhammad was born. Clearly, there's something wrong there. That's not small. That's not small. That's
there isn't
huge.
a difference of a whole century. I mean, they assign the year of the elephant to the wrong date. They're just like, yeah, that's totally when Muhammad was born. But if you're talking about his age, there are traditions that, go, he was totally 40 when that happened, because 40 is a nice, big, round, beautiful number. And then that there are other traditions that would make him around 36, which actually fit the history of the sacrilegious wars much better. And keep in mind that the politics of but that's because they didn't know when the year of the elephant is. They didn't know when the year of the elephant was.
That was not the question.
Well, he's saying that there's differences within a century. The big differences are about when the year of the elephant was. So currently, right now, people say, oh yeah, that was totally the year of the elephant that he was born, because an important thing happened. So important people ought to be born in important years, right? Like just by ancient people logic. They go, oh, well, he should have been born then. And people are like, well, no, he wasn't. But people didn't remember when the year of the elephant was.
Kalam, what is this document that you've pulled up?
So right now I'm just pulling up, this is from my presentation, but it is from M.J. Kister, Sons of Khadija, on page 81 to 82. And I'm just showing you, he's collated, various different reports of when Muhammad was born. And I'm just going to read out the green section. Muqatil, 40 years, others 30 years or 50 years or 70 years after the elephant. So some people say he was born 70 years after the elephant, while others some say that he was born 15 years before the elephant. Some say 40 days or 50 days. Some say 30 years before the elephant. And finally, some say that there was 10 years between the expedition of the elephant and the mission. So as we can see here, 30 years before the elephant and 70 years after the elephant.
Okay,
so
is everyone in agreement?
There's a whole century. So hold on, I'm just showing you that there's a whole century gap, which I said, and you said no, there isn't. And so I'm just showing you that there is various different reports showing that.
So my point is that they don't know when the year of the elephant is. Like pre-AH, what is the year of the elephant according to these traditions? The calendars don't line up. They don't know when the year of the elephant is. So these are all this free-floating date. This is not saying that Muhammad might have been 50 years younger, 50 years older, 60 years younger, 10 years younger. The year of the elephant, they don't remember when that was.
Is that what they're saying? Where are you getting that from, Mary?
Find me when they say when the year of the elephant is, when they say specifically how it refers.
Mary, you're always turning it around.
AH.
You make a statement, then somebody asks you, can you bring us where the statement comes from? And then you say, well, where else would it be? There is no, everybody is, it's not, oh my God. You have to show what you are stating. There is no point in making a statement, and then when somebody says, can you show us how you get there? You say, well, how else could it have happened?
Okay.
It doesn't work like that.
Let's look about the traditions of how old he was when the tradition.
Mary, no. Kalam asked you a very, very, very specific question.
There is zero evidence in this. There is zero evidence in this passage about when the year of the elephant is. It is a free floating
That's not
date.
the question.
Read it. The prophet was born 10 years after the elephant, 23
My
years after the
goodness.
elephant, 15 years before the elephant. When's the elephant? When is the
The
elephant in
question
AH
is not the
stations?
year of the elephant. The question was, are you able to provide any kind of evidence when, or any way that you can show when Muhammad was born and when he died? That is the question.
We are able to show the normal sorts of evidence that you have with many historical figures of this era. There are
So the
questions
answer is
about
no,
where,
there isn't
oh my
anything.
goodness. So
Can I?
no
hang
one
on,
existed unless you have
Wait.
their birth certificate. That's
Hang
the
on.
level that you're going at here.
Hang on
That
a
no
second.
one
Hang on a
existed.
second.
How old was Sophronius of Jerusalem when he died? We don't
There
even
you
know
go
the
again.
birth
Now you're
dates.
asking another question.
We
My
don't
All right,
even know
hang
the
on.
birth
Let's
dates
wait.
of many of the
Hang
emperors
on.
who were
Hang
born
on.
into
I
the
want to cut
purple.
in here. Hang on.
That's not how you do history.
I want to ask Kalam something. Kalam, in this document, is it claiming that they don't know when the year of the elephant is, or is it saying that they do know, but we're not sure how many years before or after that Muhammad was born?
Yeah, it's claiming they don't know when. Well, it's showing that they don't know when the prophet was born from the year of the elephant. So they know that there was a year of the elephant. They just don't know whether he was born in the day or the year of the elephant, before the year of the elephant, or after the year of the elephant.
Okay, let me
So
ask
that's
my
what
question.
these reports are saying.
Yeah, let me ask my question. When does the year of the elephant line up to the Hijri calendar? Is there an alignment to the Hijri calendar that is given that they are in agreement about?
I believe it is what's his name now? Zori. Zori gives a certain numeration of when the year of the elephant was before Hijri.
Okay, does everyone else agree with Al-Zuri's year of the elephant, or is Al-Zuri giving the year of the elephant based on how old or the relationship to the year of the elephant to Muhammad's birth?
He gives it not necessarily to the age of when Muhammad was born, but various different events that taken place in terms of, I think, like things like rebuilding the car, certain war that had taken place, etc., etc., etc.
Those traditions line up too. Well, I mean, if you go to that, you're finding Al-Zuri through Ibn Ishaq, and he just assigns it to the year of Muhammad's birth. So he's assigning it to the year of Muhammad's birth and then stating that in 605, and is doing the math to make 605 the date whenever the Kaaba is rebuilt. Now, again, there is not, the year of the elephant was well, according to their traditions, we do know that the Arabs had various calendars that they'd run at various times from different significant events. This is recorded in a whole bunch of other things, various battles, things that are not even happening in the Hijaz. Other Arabs had their own calendars. And there'd be a big battle, and they'd be like, oh, it's 5 years after it's battle, 6 years after it's battle, 7 years after battle. Something else would happen. They'd be like, oh, it's 6 years after this date, 6 years after that date, 6 years after this other date. The problem is that none of these calendars were recorded at this time because these were oral cultures. They were not official calendars. They were conventional calendars of the people, and they would forget how these calendars lined up. What is being debated right now, if you look and you find any tradition of Muhammad's ages at various times, you don't find a huge variance. You find 40 being the age at which, the round age, the pretty age, to which he is assigned his prophecy coming to him in 610. You don't find anyone saying, oh, he was 20 then, oh, he was 60 then, oh, he was, you don't find those variants in any of the
Mary,
that talk about his age.
Mary,
Yes?
if I can cut in there, because when they found a Birmingham manuscript, well, a couple of pages of the Quranic manuscript, and the one that's held in Birmingham, when they did the dating on it, I think they said that it could range from something like 70 years before Muhammad was born. So there is a suggestion that he could have been born a lot earlier, if we're assuming that the Quran did come around at that time. So I don't think it's as clear cut as that.
Here, let me find the dating for a whole bunch of manuscripts. Can you just
This
give
is
me 1
irrelevant.
second? I got to
This
step
is-
away for 1 second. I will listen to you. I swear. I just have to step away for 1 second. I'll be back.
That's
and I'll
no
pull something
problem.
up.
That's no
Definitely.
Be
problem.
right back.
I think that's true, isn't it? The Birmingham manuscript,
Also
when they
the
can't date
age
it was
of,
something. It was something like it was between 70 years before he was born and maybe 20 years afterwards or something like that. And I remember all the Muslims were kind of going, oh, wow, man, this is confirmation that it was from at the time. But it's like, yeah, but the whole story changes if you put it back the best part of a century. And, before Muhammad was born, that does suggest that, that doesn't solve the problem quite the way you think it does. But I may have
But I
my
think
dates a little
we have
wrong.
a different problem here. We have a problem here that Mary, like, if you say a word, she will do what apologists do, and that is just talk, but she doesn't say much. And as soon as you try and pinpoint her, she goes off on a tangent, and then she starts asking you questions, and it doesn't really lead anywhere. So you need to go, what Kalam is doing is try and get one point to pin it down to be factual. And this is what you can't do. Now, I just looked up the Sana document where she says there's total consensus and everybody agrees, and this is where it narrows down. It doesn't. You have leaves that come. I mean, we're talking about the 6th, we're talking about the 5th century. We're talking about the 7th century. We're talking about 200 years span of when the Sanaa manuscript could have been written. This is the span. And there is no way that you can go and say this is from here and there. The earliest we have is 4th century. And then it goes all the way to the 7th century when the Sanaa manuscripts could have been written. So there's a whole huge range. And what I'm hearing is, well, because it's this and this and this, therefore it's this. It's not like that. You cannot be 100% sure. And this is the whole point. If you try and pinpoint the existence of Muhammad, you need to be precise. You cannot go and say, la-di-da, and it was year of the elephant, and then you talk only about the year of the elephant. You can't do that. You need to be precise and say, well, if he was born in 570, you need to have other indications other than the year of the elephant, if you cannot pinpoint the year of the elephant.
Just
And
to be
if you
clear,
have different manuscripts saying different things, you have to be honest and say you have different dates.
just to
And
be
that is
clear,
all.
I have
You
never
need to
said
be
he was
honest
born in
and you need to be
570.
specific about these things. You can't be
So-
la-di-da and all over the show all the time.
So people
Mary, you
don't
need to
exist unless you
focus.
know their birthday, unless you have, like, there are many, many historical people whose birthday you don't have who are historical people.
This
So
is irrelevant.
let's look at the Sanaa manuscript and the actual
For sure,
dating.
No,
Mary.
this is
So,
very,
Mary, if you acknowledge that he wasn't necessarily born in that year, how much of a variation do you realistically think there is? Like 100 years before, 50 years
No.
before?
No. At
Why not?
570, I think 570 is probably the earliest possible date. If you look at the actual ages of the people surrounding him and his nephews and nieces and things like that, and
Yeah, but that's not
his uncle's
confirmed, is it?
ages.
No, but those
No,
dates
no,
are confirmed,
there
isn't it?
are other. So the traditions about his age are typically give him between the age of 36 and 40 when he has his inspiration. Now, given how they report round numbers very often, I think 36 is a very probable date.
But we're still just going on the standard narrative, which doesn't really have much to support it.
If you're saying that that
Also-
Attila
also,
the
can I
Hun
just-
didn't exist, what supports Attila the Hun? You have one guy's writings.
she's going off again.
Kalam,
I'm talking about normative history. How we
Okay,
do
I
history.
get what you're
If
saying.
no one ever existed.
Kalam, did you want to cut in there and say something?
Definitely. I just want to say, like, historically, in terms
There
of, if looking at academia, you have Lamins, you have, Sean Anthony, you have Gabriel Said Reynolds, you have, a few other names I can just put out there. They all acknowledge the fact that, the age of Muhammad is not something that is historical. It's just something that is tentative, meaning that they've simply accepted it as something that we can work on, but it's not historically verified. They've also shown
that's
that
fine.
the age of Muhammad receiving receiving revelation at the age of 40 is, it's a trope that's found inside of the Quran.
Yep. I agree.
And that's how they developed the age of 40. Then in terms of, his career, 10 years in Mecca, 10 years in Medina, or there is some differences in terms of occultation or occultation being hidden for 3 years, etc. But there's all of that to show that it's all symbolic. It's not actually historical.
So I agree.
How do you verify that?
I absolutely agree.
Historians go ahead.
No, I absolutely agree that the 40 is a nice round number that they're leaning on, and it's the number that you'll get today, right? But the earlier sources, give you variants that, ignoring the fact that they have no idea when the year of the elephant actually was, and nobody's actually right about when the year of the elephant is, by the way, because there was a historical campaign that we actually know about that was almost certainly this event, and it's not any of the dates that they remember. But ignoring that, then I'd give his age at about 36 and 6'10". I also do not have confidence that you could say that there was a singular event where he got squeezed by, where he had, it's described very clearly as a sleep paralysis event.
Hang on, Mary, just wait a second. You just said something there. You said, we don't know where the year of the elephant is, but they did a campaign where there was an event which almost...
No, we know today, just to be clear. Abraha has an inscription. We know when the year of the elephant was.
So when was it?
558, I believe. That was when it actually was. But I'm saying that the Muslims of the time did not have a proper memory of it. They were all confused, and it had happened too long ago. By the time
so 558. So what age would that make Muhammad, if we assume that that's correct?
Dead. Not dead, but not yet born. He wasn't born then. Well, again, the reason why the traditions relating Muhammad to the year of the elephant are literally all over the map is that there is very common in the ancient mind the desire to make someone's birth line up with a significant event. And that was a significant event before them. So some people lined it up, but other people were like, no, he wasn't born then. But they couldn't remember when it was. So they had various traditions about when it was. The farther back you go, the shakier the traditions get, because people's memories don't go back that far. They didn't record those. There were no written records of these people at that time. So we know when the year of the elephant was, but by the time people started writing stuff down in the late 7th century, they couldn't remember when it happened because it had happened over 100 years before to a year level precision.
But you're claiming that we pretty much know now, and it doesn't line up with the traditional narrative. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
And how many years is it off by?
It's off by like 12 years, so not by a lot. Okay. It was the formative, scary event that really massively shaped the society of the Quraysh at that time. It informs the political parties that continued to be represented into the Caliphate period. It informs their fears, their expectations. So you read Kister, right, Kalam? So are you a fan of Kister? I love Kister. Yes. Kister's fantastic. So when Kister talks about the perfumed ones and the Alliance of Allies, which is the silliest name ever, the Confederacy of Confederates, right? Or the League of Virtue, and all of these political parties that are attested to in the sources that continue to have influence well into the all the way to the end of the 7th century and into the 8th century. All of these are formed in the context of fear of the neighboring empires that might want to muck with them, and the way they are a Lahab tribe, a free tribe, a non-allied tribe, and all of those political background. Just to be clear, my view of Muhammad is incredibly similar to Kister's. I think Kister is probably the most underrated historian. He was a Jewish dude writing in the University of Tel Aviv, brilliant man, just really insightful. And these political fears and a lot of these identities and these concerns emerge when Abraha marched right by Mecca and didn't know it was there from the inscriptions. There's no indication they had any idea that it was there. But there are these people who knew about this event and were scared of it, right? They were scared that he's coming to get them. You know, he's the big, strong, and right. Go ahead.
Yeah, let Kalam come back on that.
I just wanted to do a little pushback. I would say that we don't actually know when the Year of the Elephant is. We know when Abraha did his expedition throughout the Arabian Peninsula, and we definitely have the 548, 12 years before Muhammad was supposedly, 22 years before Muhammad was supposedly born, or 558. There's a few expeditions that took place, so you could place it in any one of those, but I don't think that is correct neither. If you look at the reports as well of who carried out the expedition, there's various different names. Abraha is just one that has been chosen, became popular. There was other individuals that did expeditions that was linked to the Year of the Elephant. And I would say in terms of written records outside of the Islamic narrative, we find in John of Molasses, he writes about an event that took place with the Ethiopians and a particular elephant, and that took place, 4 elephants actually, and that took place in 531 AD. So that might have been the big spectacle that everybody was talking about, because that's when Caleb, he done the whole, fought off the Jewish what's his name, Dul Nawaz, etc., and reestablished the Ethiopian Christian rule of Arabia. Yeah.
So
and that was in 51, where John Molasses was writing, and he was standing on basically elephants, 4 elephants that was jeweled in gold, etc., etc. So that might be the inspiration for the Year of the Elephant as well.
Well,
sorry, hang on one second, Mary. Sorry, Kalam, can I ask you? You said that you've done like a presentation to say that you're doubting the historical or the historical existence of Muhammad. Is that right? You've done your own presentation on this?
Yes, correct. I've done a couple of presentations on DCCI's channel with Hatun and Jay Smith.
Oh man, we'll have to have you on, man, on another Sunday. You can come and do it here as well. That'd be cool.
So
that'd be good.
So it's Abraha is recorded because he's the king at this time. So the reason why there's Abraha being recorded, and he actually did a historical campaign. He did 2 campaigns. The second one is most likely the one that was recorded because it was the one that would have passed closest to Mecca. But he didn't care about them. He was out there. He was allied with one of the 4 sons of the last king of Kenda, trying to bring the breakaway states back under his clientage in his campaign, which was generally fairly successful, but he didn't particularly care about them. The fact that there was apparently an elephant at the lead would be the kind of thing that would be recorded, and it would impress people who don't see elephants typically. And it would not have been, if there was one elephant, which they would have gotten from Ethiopia, right? Because they were now in good terms again with King Caleb, then they would not have, it wouldn't have been a fighting elephant, it would have been for show and grandeur, as we're coming with this huge army and look at our big scary elephant along with the army. Whether or not Abraha was personally with the army, don't know, don't care. A lot of times inscriptions are given as if the king is there, whether or not he is. And could have been the case in this case. Generals are also listed on that. I don't remember any of their names, but other folks are listed as a participant in this. But the fact that the campaign of Abraha is remembered so clearly puts the genesis of these people and their remembrance and everything else in the context of people who would be interfacing with the campaign out of Ethiopia into the north, or we'll even say the east for this. So all of it fits with the context of that. I did want to interface with the idea of that it would be possible that different pages in the Sanaa manuscript would be hundreds of years apart. Just to be clear, none of the researchers who have been involved in dating the Sanaa manuscript hold that it is at all possible that the pages are hundreds of years apart. And the entire history of the dating is here. If you'll bring up the list of dates, and there's a major problem with one of them because it's actually reported wrong. Shoemaker reports it wrong. Everybody reports it wrong. When you go to the actual French source, if you'll bring up I think I'm currently sharing. Am I currently sharing? So this is the French source, and if you can't read French, it's actually saying that this is only single order of, or excuse me, standard deviation. It's only one standard deviation. So these were done incredibly poorly. And I don't know why they gave, I guess they gave these dates just to give dates that weren't huge. And he tells you that you should take the calibrated dates and double the interval to get the correct interval for the 2 sigma intervals. That's not actually legitimate. You can't actually do that and just double it. But giving those 2 interval dates, you suddenly understand why he thought only one of them was an outlier and was too early. And that one he had retested in a bunch of different labs, and those labs said that the French lab had done it poorly. So the one that was retested to later dates everywhere else. So, and in Germany, Switzerland, and in the University of Oxford, it was all dated to later dates. Now, the dates that I prefer are those that, actually the best dates are the ones that date multiple manuscripts and run models on them, or multiple pages and run models on them, to get an overall, because if you have more samples and you do it well, you have better dating. And Zurich did that. Their 2 sigma confidence level, and again, the radio center of Lyon here it's not 2 sigma. It's just people just didn't realize that it was not 2 sigma. But if you go to Lyon, you have 606 to 649 as their dates. That is not too early. You don't expect to have perfectly centered dates. That's not what you get with any testing. It's completely within the normal results that you would expect. And whenever you look at other documents that have been heavily tested, or here, let me make this one bigger. Slideshow from beginning. So if you look at other ones, and this again, for these carbon dates, I'm selecting ones that are 2 sigma, and the ones that combine multiple tests from across the manuscript, if that's available, to get the best dates possible. If I do not have 2 sigma dates, then I give an extra notation here. So like here, I said only 68%. And this is the Lyon place that, again, dates things terribly. And then again, this one is only a 90.5% likelihood in this dates. So I clarified that it's less than the 2 sigma likelihood in the places that are. So it's not one manuscript. It's not 2 manuscripts. And if you look at Birmingham, by the way, it's not just 2 folios. Birmingham is from a much larger document, of which many other pages survive in the Library of Paris. But only the Birmingham pages got tested once. And yeah, they got tested at 568 to 645, which was an earlier test than you might ideally like, but it's still within the likelihood. And once you put all of these together, all of the ranges together, you get a massive amount of evidence for many different manuscripts that have huge amounts of the Quran that are recorded from the 7th century massive
Nobody
likelihood being
disputes
from the
this.
7th century.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't
So-
disputing that. The only reason I brought the Birmingham manuscript up was to say that it does suggest that there's a range, possibly decades before Muhammad was born, that it came out.
Exactly.
So
But the range includes after he's dead too.
yeah, no, I know that, and I did
Yeah.
say that at the time.
Okay.
But I mean, I was just,
So-
but I'm just saying that because at the time Kalam had put up his document where we're talking about a possible 100-year range, and I'm just saying yes. Well, when you look at the dating of the Quran, which is obviously quite important in its existence, it also has these large ranges. So I'm just saying the idea that we can just pin it down to some exact date is just not true.
Well,
So
here's
I
the
also
thing:
wanted
if you just take one particular test and you cherry pick that test, then you can say, well, this test includes this large range. And in fact, if you go to that one sheet of that,
I wasn't cherry picking it. I wasn't cherry picking it. I just use it as an example.
But if you look at the entire thing, for example, Birmingham is part of something that represents 8 of the surat, right? So they're not just 2 or 3 surah represented here, not the whole thing, but the text of 8.
That wasn't really the point, but anyways.
So it's not 2 pages. What I'm saying is that there are 4 pages, 2 sheets in Birmingham, and there are 36
that's what I was talking
pages,
about. That's what I was talking
18
about. But the number of pages wasn't the point, Mary. So, but I think Kalam wanted to come in and say something there.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to getting back to verifying the existence of Muhammad, right? So we know that the traditional dates of Muhammad is 570 to 632. And I think we're in agreement, I believe, that the date range, the age range of Muhammad, i.e. 40 years, and then 10 years, and then 10 years, are all symbolic numbers and not actually historical. So if that's the case, how do you, where do you place Muhammad in history? And how do you verify that?
Just to be clear, I think that the Hijri date and the date of his death are true within a few months. I'm not sure how well. So when Umar declared that we're going to use these Hijri dates now, he decided that we're going to use them the way Muhammad said that years ought to be counted, and we're going to take out the intercalary years, right? And so that caused difficulty in trying to line things up in a more coherent way, because now you have this weird drifting thing. But I would say that within a reasonable number of months, the Medinan timeline is accurate.
But that's a big claim. Within months, I mean,
a reasonable number of months, like
200.
No, like less than a year. Within less than a year, plus or minus. Okay.
Why do you say this? I'm baffled. Why do you say that?
So, in terms of his death, because we already have Umar conquering places in 634, that puts a hard date for his death there. Abu Bakr and his reign has consistent attestation. The date of Muhammad's death is something that by that time there were thousands of followers. I wouldn't say tens of thousands.
I didn't think there were hard dates for the first couple of caliphs either.
No, there are. There absolutely are for Umar's death. There are inscriptions from the time of his death that are inscribed in that time period that are accepted by all the epigraphers and of the start of Uthman's reign. So we have Umar's death. We know that Umar was the caliph at the time that they invaded in 634. Nobody else was. And
that's been absolutely historically confirmed. I'm not sure that is the case.
How did you know all this?
There is no source of doubt in this in any of the historical sources.
How do you know this? Not why does nobody doubt it? How do you know this?
Because I look at the historical sources and I look for
historical source? Great. Now we're talking. What historical source do you have that mentions Umar?
So we have the Christian chronologies. How about those?
Where did they mention Umar? Great.
They mention Umar in terms of
who, where,
reigns.
how, when?
during his actual reign. Here, let me see the chronology of 705, which ends in 705, mentions when he, well, here, let me turn that off for a second. I'm going to unshare and I'm going to find the one that actually mentions him. Give me 1 second. I have to reshare a different document because these are all in different documents. I'm jumping from document to document.
Look, maybe you can put the link in the chat because I think we are kind of getting off topic. And considering that since I brought the show back, we've been known for our brevity. We are now approaching 2 hours. This is the longest show that we've ever done.
Yeah, 20
And
minutes.
I need
20
to.
minutes.
It's also the only
ask
show
a
where I
basic
don't think I've
question?
sworn either. I mean, I know Stopdraft didn't have F-bomb before, but I almost feel like I should swear. Otherwise, people are going to wonder what's happened to me. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep. This is going to be my PG episode, I think.
Darcy, can I ask a basic question? Because
Please
this
do,
is
please.
something that baffles me. Mary, you said something about the revelation of the Quran. And you said something which I'm not sure I understood this correctly. You said it was revealed in Damascus?
No, I didn't say that.
No, I'm asking, where was the Quran revealed?
So, well, I mean, it wasn't revealed. Muhammad made it up. He had to have made it up in the context of a place that didn't have flowing water or knowledge of agriculture, and where everyone spoke the Hijazi dialect.
So where was this?
So that would be Mecca and Medina. There's no reason, there's no logical, supportable reason to go, that's not plausible. It is one of the most plausible places. Other places
it was
are not
Mecca
plausible.
and Medina.
Well, yes, first Mecca, then Medina.
Okay. And you say Mecca existed
Yes.
because
we have inscriptions of one of Muhammad's own followers in Taif. We have grand people from a short period later in the 670s, 680s, who are studying there and who move from there to somewhere else.
I'm talking about 550. 550. We need to, I mean, Mecca must have existed when Abdullah and when Amina and Abdullah must have existed in Mecca, right?
Right.
I would say that
so
they did. Yes.
Where is Mecca in 550?
In the same place that it is now.
Ladies and gentlemen, sorry, I'm going to cut in here for a second. Firstly, I'm just going to. Quranic Inquisition says we would love to come on the show to present research. So I think you'd like our finding. By the way, I just want to confirm I'm actually very neutral on this whole question. I'm not I tend to go with what the historians say, but I'm in no means an expert. So I mean as I said before, I don't really have a dog in this fight. So but you're more than welcome to come on. If you want to do, we could do another episode, and maybe Kalam could come on again as well. We could do a third part to this whole Muhammad existence thing. We could make it a trilogy. So yeah, I mean, maybe drop a message in the chat, and I'll you can join our server and we can have a chat about it. But yeah, I'm quite happy for you to come on at another time. And that, as I say, that invitation is also for our friend Kalam here. I do want to say we are approaching the second hour, and we do seem to be drifting out onto kind of related topics. And as much as I've enjoyed this, I do want to bring this to a close. So, Mary, why don't you give us your concluding thoughts?
And I'll just sum something up and just very briefly. I think that the 40 years and it totally, and this moment of supreme importance absolutely happened in 610. I don't put much stock in that because specifically of the contradictory material about Muhammad's early career, whereas there is agreement later on in his career, the things he supposedly did and said, a lot of people agree with that, but there's a lot of fuzziness early on. I think like many cult leaders, if you go to Joseph, you guys aren't American. Anyway,
we know
the
Joseph
Mormon,
Smith.
you know Joseph Smith, right? So he gave 3 different versions of his first vision, right? And they were contradictory.
Yeah.
But he told those 3 different versions to his own followers because he was remaking his own image as he was gathering followers. So he was reinventing himself and his religion as he went along. This is something that you see very often in cult leaders. So the kind of precision of the vision that you get in the version that Aisha, of all people, who wasn't even born yet, tells, like, this totally happened because Muhammad told me so, right? That you don't, that I would expect that to be the kind of story making that other historical cult leaders make about themselves as they go along. This is a typical kind of thing, this developing thing. I think that the Israfel or Seraphel, however you want to render his name, that is actually really significant. The overlaps between the stuff Muhammad was doing and the Jewish Merkabah mysticism practices are really significant. These are things that Muhammad doesn't want you to think about and make comparisons to, especially later on. There's also a fundamental contradiction between the contents of the Quran and Muhammad's claim that, and initially I didn't tell anybody or warn anybody, but and the very second thing that he's telling people, he's like, oh, I'm being told to arise and warn people. What does that tell us? Tells us that Muhammad was running around as some sort of proto-prophet for a good amount of time before he decided that he had this special book. Like the book was a development. It wasn't his first message. So I see a historical figure with the kinds of fuzziness and uncertainties that you would see in other historical leaders of the same type, right?
Okay,
So
great. Thank you.
That's my summary.
Thank you very much. Kalam, would you like to give us your closing thoughts?
Please come back to me again, please.
Okay, Stops. Give us your closing thoughts. What do you think tonight?
Okay, I thought this was very brave of Mary to come on. I am highly critical of your method, not the contents. I mean, you're putting a lot of effort into it. Fine. There's a lot of things that I agree with. There's a lot of things that you bring up which are absolutely in agreement with what I have found. But I don't like that you are saying there is consensus here and there, and this is, and then you quickly run off to the next one. And this is in my eyes, it's naive, and it's very superficial, without actually going into what is happening there. So what I like to do is I like to go and take one claim at a time and then look at it and then go deeper and deeper and deeper and try and find out everything there is to know about that one claim. And not just go, oh, well, somebody says it, let's go to the next one. And this is what I found with you, because you have not really contradicted anything that I said. You said, well, the coins, the fire altar was used in other things. Okay, so that doesn't mean that the inscription, Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, that this actually refers to Muhammad of the Sunnah. You said, well, we have a mention in the Quran here and there, but this doesn't mean that it refers to the Muhammad of the Sunnah. You say there's a couple of texts where the one says, well, he's supposed to have died in 632, but this one comes out in, I don't know, 636 or 640 or whenever. So he's been dead for a while. And then you say, well, this is a text that shows that he's alive. But it doesn't refer to the Muhammad of the Sunnah. So none of this, what you said today, is in any way convincing for me. So the year of the elephant is irrelevant. This is just part of a story, of a fairy tale. This is why I call it the traditional Islamic fairy tale, the Tif. And this is all that it is. And then you come up, well, the evidence for the existence of Muhammad, because he is mentioned by Umar. Okay, where is now the evidence for the existence of Umar? So you carry on and on and on without really going into the details where all this actually happens. Then you say the Quran was written in Medina and in Mecca. Yeah, but you can't tell people in Mecca and Medina you need to eat olives if you can't grow olives in Medina or in Mecca. You can only grow them 1,000 kilometers away. And you can't get olives from outside of Mecca and transport them for 1,000 kilometers. They didn't have cold freighters in those days. So this is impossible. So there are things, if you go to the structure of Mecca, if you go and look at the walls, if you look at the geology, the architecture, none of this matches reality. And that's all I said. And this is why I'm saying there is very little evidence that Muhammad existed as described in the Sunnah. And I'm sorry, Mary, you have not managed to in any way contradict what I what my concerns are and what sort of is what my doubts are.
Okay.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for that. So this was very entertaining, and the things that you did say, absolutely okay.
Kalam, your closing thoughts, sir.
Do you know what? I would just want to say thank you to you guys, and definitely thank you to Mary for her presentation. I definitely do think she has done her research, and it's packed filled with information. It's packed filled with sources. I don't come to the same conclusion as her, but I do respect the fact that she has actually gone out of her way to actually do the research herself, and definitely, how can I put it? Confront certain things that other you know other people are saying in public, that is misinformation or untruths. So I commend her for that as well. I just don't think that there is enough evidence out there to prove that the Muhammad of the Islamic traditions actually existed. I definitely hold to it that it is a legend until it has been verified. It hasn't been verified. As I said previously, the tradition state, the accepted traditions amongst everybody is that he was born 570 and died 632. But in terms of academia, we all understand that those historical, that's not a historical chronology. He definitely wasn't born in 570. We don't have anything to say he was, received revelation at 40 years of age. We know that's symbolic. We know that his career of 20 years, 10 years in Medina and 10 years in Mecca, or 10 years in Mecca and 10 years in Medina, is completely symbolic, and just to give both cities the equality that they deserve, etc. So,
yeah, just to add one thing in, that would be a reason why they lop off the 3 years to make the nice round numbers. They don't have round numbers if they just go with their own chronology. So they just chop off 3 years arbitrarily. And it's like, now it's 10 and 10, very, very nice and round. So just as a point that would be a reason to choose to chop off specifically 3 years.
Okay. So we see that, again, it's all based on symbolism. So if it's all based on symbolism, then how do we place Muhammad in history? We can't. We can't place him in 570 because we know the 40 years completely ahistorical. We can't place him, 10 years before the, or whatever the case is, or how are you gonna, put it together to say the Hijri is real because Umar made it up, and like we can't place Muhammad in history, so we can't verify him in history. That's to me, that's plain and simple, and I think anybody can see that. In terms of all the activities that he did, we don't have anybody in terms of contemporary and all these different empires that he supposedly wrote to, the Abyssinian or the Ethiopian Empire, the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire. There's nothing near contemporary or contemporary to verify Muhammad's existence. We don't have any artifacts. We don't have any, epigraphy at all. Nothing like that to make you even think this individual existed. So I'm always curious to know, like, how, and I'm willing to accept that Muhammad existed, but I'm always curious, like, how do you put forward an argument that's convincing, that actually has evidence? And so far, I haven't found any evidence or any argument to be convincing enough to say the Muhammad of the Islamic traditions actually existed. When I come onto this channel, I'll actually give you another argument to say, although the Muhammad of the Islamic traditions didn't exist, there was a Muhammad of history that did bring about a world-changing religion in the 6th century. But that's something for another day, and we can actually back that up with historical evidence. The evidence that I found for that Muhammad is like, why can't I find it for this Muhammad of Islam? And it just doesn't exist. That's it.
Well, look, on that topic then about since we've got you here now, Kalam, and also we have Quranic Inquisition in the chat, I'd be happy to set up a date now if you want to do a sort of part 3 on this, if it's convenient. I mean, do you want to come back maybe next Sunday and we can do this again and you can give us your presentation, Kalam, or is that a bit too short notice for you? Kalam, you still there, buddy?
Yes, I'm here. I would have to check my diary. Sunday, the 28th. Let's say Monday, the 6th of October. Sorry, Sunday. Oh no, nope. I can't do that. Can you do any weekdays?
I mean, our normal show's on Fridays, so I mean,
Friday.
I don't know if you.
Okay. Yeah, that can work with me. That will work with me.
So, what do you
Brilliant.
want to come back next Friday or the Friday after, maybe?
Yeah, next Friday. We can do next Friday.
Next Friday,
The
brilliant.
26th.
All right.
Yeah.
Same invite
27.
to you,
No,
Quranic
26.
Inquisition. If you want to come in on Friday, I mean, you can just come in the chat and I can drop you the link and you can join us, and we can do a final part on this. That would be fantastic. So,
26, 8
Kalam,
o'clock.
Kalam, are you on the? It'd be at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock would be the
Okay,
time.
8 o'clock. I'm just put it into the diary now.
Do you? Are you on our Discord server? Are you on the Gin and Tonic Discord?
I will have to. I haven't been on Discord for a little while, so
Was.
I'll have to double check.
It's
So if I was, I still am then.
Oh yeah,
He
well, I
went
mean, if
into
you are, I mean,
hibernation.
I can drop you the StreamYard link so you can actually start the show with us rather than kind of coming in through the chat. But yeah, check, and if not, just leave a comment in the chat for me, mate, in the video, and yeah, we'll work it out. But yeah, that'd be good because I'd like to hear your kind of more detailed thoughts on this, and as I say, to Quranic Inquisition as well. If you want to come on, if you want to be on a Discord server as well. I don't have the link with me, but I'll stick it in a community post or something anyway. Yeah, so yeah, I also want to say thank you to Mary. It's I liked your presentation. I'm not sure if I was persuaded by it, but there was some interesting stuff in there. I do appreciate you coming on into what I hope wasn't too hostile environment for you. I know it got a bit touchy at times, but I hope you feel you were given a fair shake to sort of make your points and everything.
I was making a holistic argument about the context of this material, the context, the historical context, saying things like, oh, well, if we don't know the exact year in which someone lived, they didn't exist. You know, I think that everyone realizes that that's not a great argument. For example,
But that
there's
wasn't
not
my
agreement.
argument.
I know that's not your argument, but there's no agreement on when the year in which Constantine was born. Although he
so well, yeah. Let's not go. Let's not
yeah.
restart. I just want to say thank you very much for coming on. I do appreciate it. Obviously, you're coming onto a kind of non-believers platform, and it's it does take some sort of courage to do that. And I hope you felt that you got a decent chance to speak. I want to thank everybody in the chat tonight. There's been some really funny stuff being said in there, which I've enjoyed. And thank you to Kalam for coming on. Thank you to Stops. And we will see you all for, I suppose, round 3 of this Friday next week at 8 p.m. Everybody have a fantastic week. Look after yourselves, and we will see you on Friday.